The bamboo chair creaks. Lieutenant Watanabe Kenji knows that sound. He has heard it 100 times before, always from the other side of the table. But tonight, his wrists are the ones bound. His ribs are the ones aching. And the American pilot leaning across from him is Captain James Mitchell. The same man Watanabe tortured for 3 weeks. The same man who should, by every law of war and human nature, be reaching for revenge. Mitchell's hand rests on something between them. Watanabe does not need to look. He knows what it is. His bamboo cane. The one he used to break Mitchell's ribs, to shatter his resistance, to make him scream. Now Mitchell holds it, turns it over slowly, testing its weight. The wood creaks under the pressure of his grip. Watanabe closes his eyes. He knows what comes next. The Americans may pretend to be civilized, but in war, all men become animals. This pilot will take his revenge. He has earned it. Lieutenant Watanabe, Mitchell says, in careful, accented Japanese. Look at me. Watanabe opens his eyes. Mitchell's expression is not what he expected. There is no rage, no anticipation of violence, just exhaustion, the kind that goes bone deep. Scars climb Mitchell's neck, angry red tissue where burns healed poorly. Watanabe remembers the smell of infection, remembers refusing medical care, remembers justifying it. I need you to tell me about the defensive positions north of Manila, Mitchell says. His voice is steady, professional. Starting with the artillery emplacements near Lingayen Gulf. This is the moment, the choice Watanabe never gave him. Answer or face what comes after. But then Mitchell does something that makes Watanabe's breath catch. He sets down the cane, pushes it across the table, away from himself. I am not going to hurt you, Mitchell says, quietly. The words hang in the air between them. I need you to understand that what you did to me, I am not going to do to you. It is a trick, Watanabe thinks. It has to be. But somewhere in the American's eyes, there is something Watanabe recognizes from his own face in the mirror these last weeks, as Japan's empire crumbled. The look of a man who has seen too much, done too much, and is trying desperately to hold on to whatever pieces of humanity remain. The question forming in Watanabe's mind is not, will he hurt me anymore? It is, why will he not? 3 months earlier, Lieutenant Watanabe stood in Manila staring at a propaganda poster. An American soldier, grotesque, ape-like, standing over a broken Japanese woman. The caption read, "The beasts know no honor." Watanabe believed it, every word. His father had died in 1940, a textile merchant ruined by American trade restrictions. The old man died bitter, muttering about American arrogance. His mother's last letter before he shipped to the Philippines. Make them pay for what they took from us. His training had been explicit. Americans were barbarians who bombed civilians and knew nothing of honor. When captured, they would lie and manipulate. An interrogator had to be hard, cruel even. Mercy is a luxury we cannot afford, his commander told him. The firebombings prove the Americans show no mercy to us. Extract information by any means necessary. Watanabe nodded. He believed it. When Captain James Mitchell arrived shot down over Leyte Gulf in September 1944, Watanabe approached the interrogation with cold professionalism. The pilot was young, maybe 25, with burns on his hands and neck from the cockpit fire. Serial number 027672234, Mitchell said, reciting the Geneva Convention. That is all you are getting. The first session lasted 2 hours. Mitchell did not talk. The second session, 3 hours. Still nothing beyond name, rank, serial number. On the third day, Watanabe used the bamboo cane. 20 strikes across Mitchell's back. The pilot gasped, cried out, but gave nothing. Everyone breaks, Watanabe thought. He did not enjoy the violence. That was important. He did not derive pleasure from it. It was simply necessary, a tool, like a wrench or hammer. Your bombers destroyed my country, Watanabe told Mitchell in English during the fourth session. Do you understand what that means? Mitchell, blood crusting the corner of his mouth, looked up at him. I understand loss, he said quietly, but that does not give you the right. The cane came down before Mitchell finished. Watanabe told himself he was being professional, following orders. But late at night, lying on his bunk, he sometimes heard Mitchell's screams echoing in his memory. This is war, he thought. War demands hard men doing hard things. By October, Mitchell had been in custody for 3 weeks. He had lost weight, the burns had infected, but he still would not talk. Then, American forces landed at Leyte. The front lines collapsed. Manila fell into chaos. Most prisoners were shot. Resources could not spare transport, but Mitchell and a few pilots were marched north into the mountains. Watanabe watched Mitchell stumble along the jungle trail, hands bound, feet bare and bleeding. The American never complained, never begged, just kept walking with quiet determination that Watanabe found frustrating and oddly admirable. He should have broken, Watanabe thought. Why did he not break? By November, Japanese forces were surrounded near Clark Field. When American soldiers appeared through the jungle foliage, weapons raised, Watanabe's first thought was, now I will find out what they do to us. The Americans separate the prisoners immediately. Watanabe expects this. Divide and conquer. Standard procedure. He is marched into a tent where a medic cleans the gash on his forehead. The American corporal is gentle, surprisingly so. Watanabe flinches, expecting pain, but the medic just steadies his head. Hold still. This will sting. It does, but nothing like what Watanabe expected. The corporal applies a bandage with practiced efficiency, and then offers water from a canteen. Real water. Clean. Watanabe drinks. His throat burns for thirst. Slowly, the corporal warns, you will make yourself sick. Why is he being kind? This is the trick. They soften you up. Then the tent flap opens. Captain James Mitchell steps in, and Watanabe's heart stops. Mitchell looks different. He has gained back weight.
The burns have healed into scars. He is clean-shaven. His uniform is pressed, and he carries that bamboo cane in one hand. Their eyes meet. Recognition dawns on Mitchell's face. His jaw tightens. His knuckles whiten around the cane. The wood groans under the pressure. This is it, Watanabe thinks. This is where I pay. Mitchell dismisses the medic and guards with a gesture. They leave. Now it is just the two of them, alone. The last time they were alone together, Watanabe held all the power. Now the scales have tipped. Mitchell sits across from Watanabe, sets a folder on the table, but keeps the cane in his hand, turning it over slowly, deliberately. The sound of wood sliding against palm fills the silence. Lieutenant Watanabe? Mitchell says in that careful Japanese, do you remember me? There is no point in lying. Yes. Do you remember what you did to me? Yes. Mitchell's jaw works. The cane turns once, twice. For a moment, Watanabe thinks the American will explode, will bring that cane down, will do everything Watanabe did and worse. It would be justified. Some part of him almost welcomes it. The clean symmetry of punishment earned and delivered. But Mitchell takes a breath, releases it slowly. His grip on the cane loosens slightly. I need information about Japanese defensive positions, Mitchell says, voice controlled. Artillery emplacements, troop concentrations, command structure. You are an intelligence officer. You know these things. It is the same speech Watanabe gave Mitchell, nearly word for word. The irony hangs between them. I can only give you my name, rank, and I know the Geneva Convention, Mitchell interrupts. But we are not talking about military secrets that could turn the tide. The war is over, Lieutenant. Your forces are collapsing. What I am asking for will save lives, Japanese lives as well as American. If we know where your troops are, we can avoid unnecessary fighting. It is logical, even humanitarian. But it is exactly the kind of reasoning Watanabe would have dismissed as American weakness. I will not betray my country, Watanabe says. Mitchell nods slowly, stands, walks around the table. Watanabe tenses, every muscle coiled, preparing for the blow. Instead, Mitchell pulls out the chair beside him, sits close enough that their shoulders almost touch, close enough that Watanabe can smell cigarette smoke and soap. 3 weeks, Mitchell says quietly. You had me for 3 weeks. Do you remember the questions you asked? Yes. Do you remember my answers? You gave none. That is right. Mitchell turns to look directly at him. You broke 4 of my ribs, dislocated my shoulder, beat my feet until I could not walk, and I gave you nothing. Watanabe says nothing. What is there to say? Do you know why? Mitchell asks. Because you were trained to resist? No. Mitchell's voice is soft but firm. Because what you were doing was wrong. I knew it was wrong. And I knew that if I gave you what you wanted, you would just do it to someone else. So I held on. I survived. I waited for this moment. He lifts the bamboo cane. Watanabe closes his eyes. His breath comes short and sharp. The cane clatters onto the table. Look at me, Mitchell says. Watanabe opens his eyes. The cane lies between them, but Mitchell's hands are empty, resting on his knees. I am not going to hurt you, Mitchell says. I need you to understand that what you did to me, I am not going to do to you. The words do not make sense. Watanabe stares, searching for deception. The angle, the trick. Why? The question escapes before he can stop it. Mitchell's expression shifts. Something almost like pain crosses his face. Because if I do to you what you did to me, then what is the difference between us? His voice drops. If I become what you were, then you have won. You have made me into the monster you thought I was. Watanabe's chest tightens. This is sentimentality, weakness. But the propaganda slogans ring hollow in his mind, because the man sitting beside him is not weak. He is controlled, deliberate, choosing restraint, not from inability to inflict harm, but from refusal to. I do not understand, Watanabe says, hating how small his voice sounds. I know, Mitchell says. That is what I am counting on. Over the next hour, Mitchell asks questions. Watanabe answers some, deflects others. But the interrogation, if it can be called that, is not what Watanabe expected. When Watanabe refuses to reveal troop positions, Mitchell doesn't push. He just notes it and moves on. When Watanabe will not identify commanding officers, Mitchell accepts it. When Watanabe's stomach growls audibly, Mitchell calls for food. The meal arrives on a dented metal tray, real rice, white, steaming. canned vegetables, even beef. The smell alone makes Watanabe's eyes water. He hasn't seen meat in 3 months. Eat, Mitchell says. We will continue after. Watanabe hesitates. Poisoned? Drugged? But Mitchell takes a bite from the same pot, drinks from the same canteen, and Watanabe's hunger overwhelms caution. The food is good, substantial, warm. Watanabe eats slowly, trying to maintain dignity, but his hands shake. Mitchell watches without comment. When Watanabe finishes, the American lights 2 cigarettes, offers one across the table. Watanabe cakes one, draws smoke deep into his lungs. American tobacco, harsh, but the first he has had in weeks. Thank you, Watanabe says, before he can stop himself. Mitchell nods. You are welcome. They sit in silence. The absurdity strikes Watanabe. Sharing a cigarette with the man he tortured, accepting kindness from the man who should be taking revenge. Why are you doing this? Watanabe asks again. Mitchell takes a long drag, exhales slowly. Because someone has to break the cycle. I spent 3 weeks in that cell thinking about what I would do if our positions were reversed. I realized I had 2 choices. Become what you were, or prove there is another way. The other prisoners? Watanabe asks. How are they being treated? Same as you. Fed, given medical care. Questioned, but not. Mitchell gestures toward the cane. Not like that. I do not believe you. You do not have to, Mitchell says simply. You will talk to the others. You will see. Over the next days, Watanabe does see. He is housed with other captured soldiers. The Americans provide adequate food, clean water, medical attention. The guards are stern, but not cruel. No one is beaten, no one is tortured. It doesn't make sense. Everything Watanabe believed about American brutality, it is not happening. One night, unable to sleep, Watanabe asks the sergeant in the next cot if he has experienced mistreatment. No, the sergeant says quietly. They feed us, let us wash, they even give us cards to write home to tell our families we are alive. Watanabe lies awake, staring at canvas overhead. This should be relief, he thinks. Why does it feel worse? On the 5th day, Mitchell returns. He brings Watanabe to a different tent, something closer to an office. There is a desk, chairs, even a bookshelf. I have a proposal, Mitchell says. We are processing hundreds of Japanese prisoners. Many do not speak English. We need translators. You are qualified. Watanabe stares. You want me to work for you? I want you to help us help your own people, Mitchell corrects. We are trying to arrange for prisoners to write home, to receive mail, to notify families they are alive.
We cannot do it without translators. I could feed you false information. You could, Mitchell agrees. But you will not. How do you know? Mitchell meets his eyes. Because you are starting to understand, we are not what you were taught. And because I think you are a man who values honor, real honor, not the twisted version you were sold. The words hit like a physical blow. Mitchell is right. The gap between what he was taught and what he is experiencing, it is widening every day. I need time to think, Watanabe says. Take what you need, Mitchell says. But think about this. Your war is over. The only question now is what kind of man you want to be when you go home. Watanabe spends 2 more days wrestling with the decision. He talks to other prisoners, asking carefully veiled questions. The stories are consistent. The Americans ask questions but do not torture, do not starve, do not execute. One pilot tells Watanabe about being shot down. They pulled me from the water while I was burning. An American sailor jumped in and dragged me out, saved my life. I asked him why. You know what he said? Because you needed help. As if it was obvious. That night, Watanabe dreams of his father. The old man stands in their shop in Osaka, running his hands over bolts of silk that will never sell. We lost everything because of them, his father says. But when Watanabe looks closer, his father's face is sad, not angry. Do not let hatred define you, Kenji. That is what killed me, not poverty, hatred. Watanabe wakes with tears on his face. The next morning he tells Mitchell he will translate. The work is harder than expected, but not in the ways Watanabe anticipated. It is not physically demanding, mostly sitting at a desk, rendering Japanese letters into English, helping American officers understand cultural context. What is hard is confronting his own actions every day, because the prisoners he translates for tell their stories, and many involve interrogations like the ones Watanabe conducted. Beatings, starvation, torture. One prisoner breaks down crying while describing his treatment at a Manila facility, the same one where Watanabe questioned Mitchell. The prisoner mentions an interrogator named Lieutenant Watanabe, describes the bamboo cane, the methodical cruelty. Watanabe's hand shakes as he translates. Mitchell across the desk notices but says nothing. After the prisoner leaves, Watanabe cannot meet Mitchell's eyes. I did not know, Watanabe says quietly, or I told myself I did not, that it was necessary, that you were the enemy. You did know, Mitchell says, not unkindly. You just chose not to face it. Yes. Barely a whisper. Mitchell is silent for a long moment. Then, what matters now is what you choose to do with that knowledge. In early December, a group arrives from a mountain camp. They are in terrible condition, malnourished, diseased, brutalized. Among them is a young American pilot, barely 20, Lieutenant Robert Chen. His legs are infected from prolonged beatings to his feet. He can barely walk. The doctors worked frantically. The damage is severe. Watanabe watches through the medical tent entrance, sees the pilot's pain, hears his screams when they debride infected tissue, and he sees Mitchell standing beside the cot, holding the young pilot's hand, murmuring reassurance. That night, Watanabe goes to Mitchell's quarters. The captain sits on his bunk, cleaning his pistol, face drawn with exhaustion. The pilot, Watanabe says, Chen, will he survive? Doctors think so. He'll lose some toes, might never walk properly again. Watanabe swallows hard. The interrogator who did that, if you find him, when we find him, Mitchell corrects, he will face a tribunal, probably execution for war crimes. And me? The question comes out before Watanabe can stop it. What I did to you? Mitchell looks up, really looks, searching his face in the lamplight. That is up to you, Mitchell says, finally. You can spend the rest of your life running from what you did, or you can face it. Choose differently going forward. Try to make amends. How? Watanabe's voice breaks. How do I make amends? By helping now, Mitchell says. By translating honestly. By treating prisoners with dignity. By being the man you should have been from the start. It is not forgiveness. Mitchell does not say, I forgive you. Watanabe realizes he does not want easy forgiveness. He does not deserve it. What Mitchell is offering is something harder. Responsibility. The burden of change. I will try, Watanabe says. Mitchell nods. That is all any of us can do. Over the following weeks, something shifts. Watanabe throws himself into the work with intensity. He volunteers for extra shifts. He helps develop protocols for processing prisoners more humanely. One day in mid-December, a group of Japanese officers refuse to cooperate. They are belligerent, citing Bushido code, insisting death before surrender is the only honor. The American colonel is losing patience. We can make this harder for them. No, Mitchell says, let Watanabe talk to them. Watanabe enters the tent. The 5 officers look at him with contempt. A translator for the enemy? A traitor. You disgrace the uniform, one sneers. Perhaps, Watanabe says quietly, but I am alive, and so are you, and that gives us a choice. He tells him about his experience, not sparing himself, describing the propaganda he believed, the cruelty he inflicted, the reckoning he faced when truth became unavoidable. We were lied to, Watanabe says, about what the Americans would do, about what honor means. Real honor is not dying for nothing. It is living with the consequences of our choices. It is choosing to be better. One officer spits at his feet, but two others listen. Their expressions shift from contempt to uncertainty to something like recognition. By the end, 3 of the 5 agree to cooperate. Mitchell, waiting outside, nods approval when Watanabe emerges. You reach them, he says. I reached the ones ready to hear it, Watanabe corrects. The others, I was like them once. It takes time. Yes, Mitchell says, it does. The war ended on August 15, 1945. By then, Watanabe had spent 9 months working as a translator. He had processed hundreds of prisoners, helped arrange family notifications, even testified at war crimes tribunals about conditions in Japanese camps. When MacArthur announced surrender, Watanabe expected arrest. Instead, Mitchell called him into his office one last time. You are being repatriated, sent home to Japan. Watanabe stared. But the tribunals, your name appeared in investigations. Mitchell admitted. But I testified on your behalf, explained your cooperation, the work you did to improve conditions. You lied for me.
No, Mitchell said firmly. I told the truth. You did terrible things, but you also change. That matters. Watanabe's throat tightened. I do not deserve. It is not about deserving, Mitchell interrupted. It is about choosing what kind of world we build after this. We can spend 50 years executing everyone who committed atrocities, or we can give people the chance to be better. Both paths are just. I chose the second. He handed Watanabe an envelope. My address in California. Write to me. Let me know how you are doing. Watanabe took it with shaking hands. Why? After everything's. Mitchell smiled, sad around the edges. Because I need to know it mattered. That choosing mercy over revenge made a difference. Can you give me that? Yes, Watanabe whispered. I can try. Watanabe returned to Osaka in November 1945. The city was ruins, his family home destroyed, his mother dead during the final months. He had nothing, but he had Mitchell's address. The first letter was hardest to write. How do you explain transformation to the man you tortured? Watanabe wrote anyway. Just a few lines. I am home. I am alive because of your mercy. I will try to honor it. Mitchell's response came 3 months later. Glad you made it. Keep trying. Over 5 years, they corresponded. Watanabe trained as a teacher, focusing on English education. When students asked about the war, he told them the truth. Not sanitized versions, but the real story of what hatred and dehumanization had done. In 1950, Mitchell visited Japan as part of a veterans delegation. They met in a small cafe in Tokyo, sat across from each other, awkward at first. Then Watanabe said the words he had rehearsed for 5 years. I am sorry for what I did to you. I know it is not enough. But it is enough, Mitchell said, because you mean it and because you have spent 5 years proving it. They talked for hours about the war, about survival, about the difficulty of living with memory. I still have nightmares, Mitchell admitted, about the interrogations. Sometimes I wake up and feel the cane. I dream of you too, Watanabe said quietly. But in my dreams you are holding the cane, and you are choosing not to use it. That choice haunts me more than any beating could have. Mitchell nodded slowly. Good. It should. That is how you stay human, by letting the weight of your choices matter. The afternoon stretched. The cafe filled and emptied around them. 2 men who should have been enemies, now something beyond friends, witnesses to each other's transformation. As they prepared to leave, Mitchell reached into his jacket, pulled out something wrapped in cloth. It was a piece of bamboo, 6 inches long, worn smooth. I kept this, Mitchell said. Cut it from that cane after I pushed it away. Carried it through the rest of the war. Wanted to remember the moment I chose differently. He slid it across the table. Now you carry it. Remind your students that mercy is the hardest strength. Watanabe's hands shook. As he picked it up, the bamboo was warm from Mitchell's pocket. Thank you, Watanabe whispered. Not for the gift, for everything. Mitchell nodded, stood, extended his hand. Watanabe took it. They shook, not as interrogator and prisoner, not as enemies, but as two men who had seen the worst of war and chosen somehow to find their way back to humanity. Outside the cafe, they paused on the sidewalk. Tokyo bustled around them, a city rebuilding, a nation transforming. Take care of yourself, Lieutenant, Mitchell said. You as well, Captain. They parted. Mitchell disappeared into the crowd. Watanabe stood there clutching the piece of bamboo, feeling its weight in his palm. A reminder, a promise, a choice made real. In 1953, Watanabe founded a small English-language school in Osaka. He dedicated it to international understanding and the prevention of future conflict. Among the books in his personal library was that piece of bamboo, mounted on the wall with a plaque beneath it. The plaque read, "Mercy is not weakness. It is the hardest strength of all." When students asked about it, Watanabe told them the story. All of it. His cruelty, Mitchell's restraint, the transformation that followed. He never softened details or excused his actions. This is what happens when we believe propaganda over humanity, he would say. This is what happens when we dehumanize our enemies. And this, he would gesture to the bamboo, this is what it takes to break that cycle. One person choosing differently. James Mitchell died in 1989 at 70. Watanabe, then 73, traveled to California for the funeral. Mitchell's daughter approached him afterward, recognition in her eyes. He talked about you. She said he said you gave him something important. I gave him pain, Watanabe said, guilt still raw after 45 years. No, she said gently. You gave him proof that people can change, that mercy is not wasted. He needed to believe that. Knowing you became the man you are, it helped him. Watanabe Kenji died in 2001 at 85. His school still operates in Osaka. The bamboo remains mounted on the wall, and beside it, a photograph. Two men in their 60s, standing together in Tokyo, arms around each other's shoulders. One Japanese, one American. Both smiling, both free.